All right, this is Una Daly from the Community College Consortium at the OpenCourseware. Welcome to all of you this morning. Today is our MOOC webinar, an evolving model of curriculum delivery and assessment. And I'm very pleased to have three MOOC experts in the room with me today, and you all. Dr. Kelvin Thompson from the University of Central Florida, Carol Edwards from the British Columbia Institute of Technology, and Dr. Preetha Ram from Open Study and Emory University, who are going to share their expertise both from an instructor, student, and an educational technology point of view. Before we get started, I just want to briefly go over the Collaborate room that we're using for those of you who might be new to the system. So in the top left-hand corner of your window, you will see the audio and video controls. If you are on the phone listening to this, make sure that your microphone and speakers are in the off position in Collaborate, so that you don't have the phone and the computer fighting with each other. Otherwise, feel free to leave those on if you're listening on the computer. Towards the end of the session, we will have a Q&A where people can speak up, and you will be able to talk on a microphone by clicking on the talk button. We ask that you don't do this during the presentation simply because we have a very full webinar today. Directly underneath the audio and video, you'll see the participants list, and hopefully you see yourself there. And you can send messages to each other, to the entire room, questions to our presenters by using the chat window directly underneath the participant list. If there is no further questions, I will continue on here. Please introduce yourself in the chat window. Tell us what college, university, or organization that you're with, and what your interest is in MOOCs and open educational resources. I appreciate you doing that. Also, we're always interested in hearing how you heard about our webinar. So please share that as well. Thank you, James. I see James entered his information. And James Glappa-Grosskrag from College of the Canyons is the president of our Community College Consortium for Advisory Board. So now I'd like to ask you to show us on the globe where you're from. I know many of you are from North America, but we occasionally get folks from overseas. The OpenCourseware Consortium is a global organization with representatives and members on 6 continents. So I'll ask you to do that by using the toolbar. It's in the gray vertical line between the participants and the whiteboard. And if you click on that second icon that looks like a star, you can choose one of those pretty little pointers, either the fingers or the check boxes or the smiley face. Go ahead and click on one of those and drag it over to show us where you're located. Oh, wonderful. Looks like we have somebody from South America, and we have a lot of folks on the East Coast and West Coast. And the West Coast, of course, is where I'm located, and 2 of our speakers are on the West Coast. Okay, wow, exciting. And one of our speakers is from Florida. All right, excellent. Okay, our agenda this morning, after a brief introduction, which I will complete here shortly, we are going to hear from our 3 presenters and on their various areas of expertise. And I wanted to let you know that our next webinar is on OER research, and that will be December 4th. And our Q&A will be at the end. All right, for those of you who are not familiar with the Community College Consortium at the OpenCourseware, our mission is expanding access to education through the promotion of open educational resources. This webinar is part of our professional development series where we present topics of interest to faculty, administrators, staff, and students at community colleges. We have members all around the North America area. We are looking to fill in that center area as well as grow internationally. So we welcome your participation and joining us as a member. All right, now on to today's topics. So for those of you who might not know, I don't know if there's anyone out there that doesn't know what the 4 letters in MOOC stand for, but that's Massive, Online, Open, and Course. And contrary to what you've probably been reading in the last year or so about MOOCs, we have just entered the year of the MOOC according to the New York Times. I think they announced that last week just in time for our webinar. I think they must have known we were going to discuss this, so they helped us out. They were actually started back in 2008 at Athabasca University in Canada. And they were more, those early MOOCs, which actually continue today, were more of a learning experiment. They were exploring emerging technology and how it supports learning, as opposed to today's more algorithmic based MOOC platforms that support thousands of students. But all of us know that last fall Stanford offered that artificial intelligence MOOC, which really ignited the MOOC industry. 160,000 registrants worldwide. By the end of December, Dr. Sebastian Thrun, one of the instructors in the course, founded Udacity, which was, I think, the first for-profit MOOC provider back last December. And it's been a wild ride ever since. So I think one way to understand this might be to look at an educational technology matrix that has been defined by Justin Reich at the Berkman Institute of Harvard. And what he does with educational technology is he puts them into categories, into this 2x2 matrix of market-driven, open, and Dewey referring to John Dewey. And it's kind of an interesting way to look at the spectrum of MOOCs that are being offered today. So the market-driven ones are those that are trying to make a lot of money, and we would probably put Udacity and Coursera in that area. There's a number of other ones as well. Now directly underneath that we have what we call the open MOOCs, which are more of the edX type MOOCs, which is a combination of Harvard and MIT working together. There's a number of universities that are trying to do this. They are not trying to make money, but along with the market-driven MOOCs, they feel that learning can be delivered to students and the delivery can be optimized through algorithms. So there's that model, and then I think as we jump on the other side of the axis here to the Dewey, these are more experiments in learning, and this harks back to those original MOOCs that were offered up at Athabasca University in Manitoba, Canada, where learning is not delivered to students, but it rather emerges through learner experiences. So a lot of different dynamics and tensions going on in the MOOC world about what really is a MOOC. And hopefully that helps a little bit in putting it in perspective. And now at this point, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Kelvin Thompson. He's the Assistant Director for the University of Central Florida Center for Distributed Learning. And he's also a graduate faculty scholar within the College of Education. He's collaborated on hundreds of online and blended course designs over the past 14 years. And he recently developed the BlendKit course, open courseware, as part of UCF's Blended Learning Toolkit. And he has been teaching this as a MOOC for the past 2 semesters with Dr. Linda Fuchs. And today he's going to share his experiences with that MOOC. Kelvin?
Thanks, Una, and welcome everybody from slightly cloudy Florida. Glad that you guys were able to join us today. I want to give you just a little bit of background on how we got involved doing an open online course. We've done 2 iterations now, one last summer in 2011 and one that we just are finished with, but are still working out a few of the wrap-up details within the last week or so. And use that as a little bit of framing on as we consider what it means to the place of massive open online courses in higher education. As Una said, the University of Central Florida, partnering with the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, ASCU, we received a Next Generation Learning Challenges grant to distribute what we have learned over the last 15 or 16 years about blended learning at UCF through ASCU's partnership with higher education institutions. And as my colleague Chuck Jubin likes to quip, it's Ron Popeil of Ronco fame meets the Home Shopping Network. And so part of that was we put together this whole website about all kinds of blended learning resources, and that's at blendedlearningtoolkit.org. And that contains best practices and strategies at a high level. There's 2 open educational resource prototype courses, one in composition, English composition, and one in college algebra. There's assessment and data collection protocols and all kinds of stuff for collecting data on an initiative. And there's faculty development resources. Now, we had 20 partner institutions during the term of the grant a year ago in 2011, and so there were some faculty development efforts aimed at instructors of English Comp and college algebra. But then we also felt obligated to put together some faculty development resources that would meet a broader set of needs. And we did that on a subsection of the Blended Learning Toolkit.org site, and we refer to that as the Blend Kit course. And you can get to that particular part of the course by using this URL right here, bit.ly/blendkit, all lowercase, no spaces. And our goals for rolling out the BlendKit course, OpenCourseWare, were to help faculty or instructional designers or faculty developers to be more effective at designing and developing blended learning courses. And that goes all the way from initial conceptualization all the way through implementation and getting peer feedback at one's own institution. So inside the BlendKit course materials, which are all public on the web, all out there in perpetuity, there they are at that URL, bit.ly/blendkit. There are instructional modules. There's an open BlendKit reader that you can put on your Kindle or your Sony reader, or this HTML versions. There's do-it-yourself design task guides that will walk you through building your blended learning course. There's recordings of interdisciplinary faculty interviews and archived recordings of our cohorts with QA and discussions from when we've done our open online courses. So we put all that together as open educational resources, just OpenCourseWare. So why do an open online course? I was a lurker in George Siemens and Stephen Downs' CCK 08 open online course. And there was an Italian researcher named Antonio Fini did the study of interaction patterns in CCK 08, and he observed that while OERs are merely content, open online courses are live courses. You bring to life content by doing this. Now, certainly in the early days of Alec Couros and George Siemens and Stephen Downs and those guys, they were partnering with an existing academic course and then bringing other folks into the mix. Our example here is more of a professional development, faculty development kind of a standpoint. But similarly, we put together all this OpenCourseWare, and we wanted to make it a more rich experience initially for our partners in the grant. So we took all that OER stuff and we added 5 weeks of facilitation. We have email messages trying to keep people on track, weekly focused 30-minute webinars featuring guest speakers and some interaction opportunities with our participants, weekly readings and activity reflection prompts for people who wanted to blog, giving more interaction opportunities through commenting and so forth, and then a social networking platform or two that allowed more interaction. And then we just really encourage folks to go at whatever pace they wanted to. There's no real completion or not completion. There's just come in, it's okay. Don't get too compulsive about it. Come in as much as you want and make it work for you. So we did that in the summer of 2011. And here's a couple of things that we found out about that. Of course, we did a course evaluation at the end. And we asked people, we asked a lot of things, but we asked, what did you like best about BlendKit 2011? And these were open-ended responses. So these are low percentages you see, but these are coded. We saw these themes emerge in the open responses. Folks appreciated the far-reaching impact, the diverse viewpoints, the sense of community. They liked meeting together synchronously. They liked that everything was applicable. They could use it. One person said it was tied to real activities, things I needed to do for my blended course, even though I didn't always realize beforehand that I needed to do them. What did you like least? Similarly, time's a factor. I didn't have the time to do what I wanted to do, and I couldn't make the webinars or whatever. Some people thought, well, there's not a whole lot of interaction or participation. Oh, there's lack of structure. Wow, why in the world would you use Twitter and blogs? So one person said, I didn't participate in the blogs. I've never blogged before. Felt intimidated by the idea of putting my random thought about the course out there for others to see. So as I step back to the end of BlendKit 2011, I reflected that many of the MOOCs that were in the the popular sphere drew sort of bleeding edge, self-directed learners. But the BlendKit 2011 participants there weren't as many folks in those categories. There were folks who were just many faculty and instructional designers who are just looking for some help in developing blended learning courses. So my thought going forward was, how can we achieve the goals that we have for the BlendKit course while making it a more comfortable experience for our newcomers? And so we implemented BlendKit 2012 this fall, and these are the modifications that we had. We used an LMS communication hub for registered participants. We delineated if you're a registrant and you don't do really anything, we'll consider you an auditor, but we'll have a number of defined tasks, and so if you complete those, we'll consider you a completer. If you're somewhere in between those two, we'll call you a participant. We implemented online achievement badges, and we're in the process right now of finalizing, making sure we've counted everybody's badges, and we're issuing completion certificates this week. We of course had new guest faculty to interview and new case study audio recordings as a result in our little growing repository. So let me just kind of compare and contrast what we learned from these two iterations. Just looking at before day one, registration goes on for a while before we actually start the course. So before that 5-week period, just right beforehand, in BlendKit 2011, there were less than 100 registrants, all from the US and nobody from our public school districts, nobody from the K-12 area. BlendKit 2012, before day one, there were more than 1,000 registrants, multiple countries represented, and a number of K-12 districts. Looking at this US map, the yellow stars are the original 20 partner schools in our ASCU UCF NGLC grant. The magenta dots are individuals who participated in BlendKit 2011, which was a far more wide-reaching impact than the specified grant partners. But then the larger, in many cases, blue circles are the participants in BlendKit 2012. The larger the circle, the more people there are in that state participating. Worldwide, similarly, we didn't have any NGLC partners, of course, around the world because it was a US-based grant project. But there were certainly in BlendKit 2011, in the magenta dots, you can see that there were folks from around the world participating, but there were a lot more of them participating in BlendKit 2012. We asked, again, we haven't really had a chance to compile a whole lot of data since we just were finishing up, but just looking at the self-reports from week 1 feedback that we received, here's how some things shook out. Well, we asked all the participants, what did you do, and what learning activities did you choose to engage? And in 2011, the webinars were a thing. They were just what everybody kind of anchored down to. They were still quite prominent in BlendKit 2012, but less so. In fact, the readings, the BlendKit Reader became the dominant thing, not with 100%, but with 92%. And you can see that some of the other, we see that the blogging became posting blogs and commenting on others' blogs. There was a surge in BlendKit 2012, and as a result, not surprisingly perhaps, while there were 25% of our respondents that in BlendKit 2011 had a high degree of connectedness to other participants, that went up quite a bit in BlendKit 2012. We implemented achievement badges, as I said, in BlendKit 2012, and unintentionally that has resulted in even more data that's been fascinating for us to look at. But of course, participants can engage with content in ways that don't necessarily leave tracks behind. But when we implemented achievement badges, and they're based upon evidence of some sort, it made that the individual's engagement more visible to us. For instance, if we put out a Google form for reading reactions, and so if somebody just completed a reading, I read chapter 2, and here's what I thought. There were a lot fewer people who would do that on a public blog, but a lot more so would just fill out that little Google Reader form. Now I expected that to be a pro forma exercise, just yep, chapter 2 was good, but it was not the case. We had paragraphs of substantive reflection on the reading, but we would not know that people were as engaged with the Blendkit reader in this case as now we know that they were as a result of these data that came through. If you're interested in kind of our completion criteria and the way the badging work, the little URL in the bottom right-hand corner, bit.ly/blendkit_badges will take you there to that page. I want to leave you with a couple of participant perspectives. We had several folks participating in Blendkit 2012 who also were currently or in the past participating in one of the big MOOCs, the commercial MOOCs of some sort. And so here are a few comments from participant blogs. This one participant said in the MOOC, and that was a 50,000 learner MOOC, it's all about repeating that students should not expect contact from the instructor or the instructional team because there are so many students. But the sort of networking that Blendkit 2012 is facilitating is crucial to the wider implementation of blended learning techniques and the development of best practices. Another participant said, why am I liking Blendkit 2012? Here's a list of, and he had 11 reasons, but here's 2 of them. Student-to-student and student-instructor interaction via Hoot Course. Hoot Course is a Twitter alternative. And then he said the instructor is present and engages with students. It's not just a course, it's a real class, which is no mean feat. And then kind of the so what here is another one of our participants was blogging and said, I've engaged in a lot of different things. I try to look after professional development. I try to keep growing and stretching. But then she said, Blendkit 2012 demonstrates a new way of doing things. I see resources, best practices, and a supportive group of like-minded people, various tools all coming together. While I have a long way to go, I can see a path. There is a way. And to me, that just exemplifies what we saw this summer. Many of you will perhaps be aware that in the New York Times, University of Virginia faculty member Professor Edmondson posted an op-ed piece about online courses and kind of ran them through the ringer, and he was really talking about MOOCs, although he didn't really say that. And Joshua Kim, in an open letter response on another website, which is very good, the link and the QR code is right there on screen, you can use that. And toward the end, he concludes with, it is a very well written piece, both of them are for that matter, he concludes with, any course not built around dialogue between faculty and students will quickly be understood as fundamentally lacking. And that's certainly been our experience. I would encourage you after today, if you want to find out more about our experiences or just collaborate or touch base, my contact information is there, and of course you can get to the Blendkit course materials at the URL there. Look forward to your questions at the end of the session.
All right, thank you very much, Kelvin. Actually, you ended a minute early, so I'm going to allow one question, if I may, because I think one of these questions might be kind of related. It might be better answered right now rather than later. And there was a question about participation rates. It said, what accounts for the change in participation patterns and rates? I'm assuming within your Blendkit.
Yeah, and again, those are self-reports, and the final, we haven't really looked at all the data between the 2 courses yet because we're still trying to wrap up some of the administrivia of this one. My thought is that we made explicit even more so in Blendkit 2012 kind of what's what, and where things are and what can you do. What I found in Blendkit 2011 is a lot of folks just tell me what I need to do. And even though we had pages that were essentially modules that did that very thing, they're in sort of a non-traditional public website, and they weren't front and center, because I refused to say, you must do this, because it was intended to be come and make of it what you want to experience. But when we rolled out the communication hub, as we called it, in our learning management system, for some people that felt more like a safe home base. And I'm sure just were influenced by when Linda Futch joined me this year, and both of us were tuned into the fact of trying to make as explicit as possible for folks what a possible path for them might be. So I like to think that resulted in some of those changes, plus the fact, of course, as I mentioned that before, it was blogging would have been the only way of perhaps sharing like say a reading reaction or making that kind of contact, that in Hoot course. Whereas again, the learning management system, if that was a more comfortable venue, that was available this time. So that's my initial thought. We'll see as we look at all the other data.
Kelvin, if you want to, you can elaborate later if you'd like at the end. Good question. Okay, excellent. At this time, I would like to introduce Carol Edwards, who is a business professor and financial analyst at the British Columbia Institute of Technology. She's an award-winning instructor there and brings over 15 years of financial and computer experience to BCIT. She's a chartered financial analyst and has worked in the financial industry on analysis of complex data, designing iterative forecasting models, and security selection for portfolio management. This last summer, Carol was a student in multiple MOOCs offered by Coursera, and she will report on her findings through an educator's lens. In addition, Carol has written a report that covers this in a more comprehensive manner, and I will be making that available over file transfer at the end of her presentation. Carol, at this time, would you like to take over the application sharing?
I can't. It's still grayed out. I have rebooted. Nothing's working. So I think you're going to have to put my slides up unless there's some sort of privileges you have to give me to get to application sharing.
All right. Let me just, Carol, so you're Carol number 3.
Carol number 3, as I said, I've logged in multiple times. It will not give me the chat, and it will not give me application sharing.
I know what the problem is. Carol, I'm very sorry. You didn't have moderator privilege.
There we go. Okay, thank you. There we go. Okay.
Carol is going to be showing her slides from her computer, but in addition, her slides are on the whiteboard for later viewing if you need it.
Okay, it's sharing my desktop, so now I have to get to the slides, which I didn't think I'd be able to get to, so I don't have it up. There we go. Here it comes now. Can you see what's happening?
We certainly can, yeah.
Terrific. We're ready to go. Okay, first of all, good morning everyone, and sorry about the glitch there. Everything seems to be working now. I'm going to sort of reiterate a little bit about what Una said. I was tasked by BCIT to actually investigate MOOCs over the summer, and I felt the best way to learn about them was to enroll in them. However, unlike my colleagues, Prisa and Kevin, I'm going to be looking at these. Why are they moving? I'm going to be looking at these from the perspective of for-profit MOOCs, and I think you're going to find they're a horse of a different color. I actually enrolled in 2 Coursera courses, Fantasy and Science Fiction, The Human Mind, Our Modern World, and Introduction to Finance. The first is a, essay format, peer evaluation. Didn't do the readings, watched only the Unit 1 videos, and I was trying to test the rigor of these things. The second one was based on multiple choice, fill in the blanks. It was computer graded. It was test system response to the student in trouble. For the first one, I got a 4 out of 6 without doing the work. And for the second one, I intentionally failed by choosing 10% based on random answers. I'd like to start with my conclusions. First of all, I support online and open learning. I think if it's professionally done and student-centered, it's a good thing. However, for-profit MOOCs are the fast food version of education. It was a dispiriting experience in an extremely distressing environment. I would have to give it a grade of F. As far as I'm concerned, they're a failure as an educational product. Indeed, my experience was so dissatisfying, I would have to say that I think these things are a dead end as an educational experience. Why? I think it's a function largely of form. What we have is a no-fee delivery system to learners. It's desperately seeking profitability. It enrolls unmanageably large numbers in the hopes of generating huge revenues. In my MOOCs, there were 130,000 in finance and 40,000 in fantasy and science fiction. It's impossible to provide proper or professional educational services. It relies for educational support on untrained and unsupervised learners. That creates an extremely ugly learning environment, what I would call a sausage machine with predictable results. It fails the majority of learners. These private sector MOOCs are about generating a profit from education. The subtext is it's about reducing costs, finding a revenue model, making money. It's about processing people as cheaply as possible. That means minimal feedback, none of it by an expert, no professional support. Experts and professionals are both expensive. And this is all done in an environment which is cold and ugly with no personalized service. The result is entirely predictable. You get cheating and shortcutting of the system. And my research shows greater than 90% of registrants drop out or fail. This is a very serious indictment of that type of MOOC. So let's go on to my next set of concerns with for-profit MOOCs. And I'd like to take a closer look at some of the problems. First of all, these MOOCs presume that learners are autodidacts. You are told there will be no response from the instructors. There's zero contact with them. True autodidacts are actually extremely rare, and I know most people can teach themselves something if the subject matter is simple. But when you get into more complex, difficult areas of learning with high levels of integration and synthesis and self-discipline, that is not the case. I would have to say that I believe that teaching evolved the way it did for excellent reasons. Most learners require the guidance of a professional who can direct and assist them. So the question is, what are you going to do if you are not an autodidact? Who are you going to turn to if you can't teach yourself? Well, in the MOOCs, you are expected to turn to your peers. And I would note that a peer is absolutely anyone who's logged into the MOOC as a fellow learner. Now, there's a news flash here. Logging into a MOOC does not magically confer skills as a peer tutor, and that is what is required. Teaching is a profession for a reason. This sort of thing only works if peers have worthwhile knowledge to impart, if they understand how to communicate, but you need a lot more than communication. What you need is effective teaching skills, and people have to receive good feedback so that they can improve their teaching and marking skills. I'd note that we do not just let anyone become a peer tutor. They have to have demonstrated skills, and we provide training in how to effectively tutor a fellow learner, oversight, continuous feedback and instruction, and a formal structure within which to work. What I find an essential and absolutely frightening aspect of these MOOCs is that absolutely anybody on an ad hoc basis with no oversight, no vetting, no training can be a peer tutor. Indeed, it's essential. It's a way of reducing costs. Experts cost money, but people logged onto a website, well, they provide free labor. Next, we got to operate entirely inside a bubble. And there was no talking with the instructors. There was no talking with those who were marking. There was no talking with those who were marking you. And this leads to entirely predictable results. First of all, you find that your peers are released from the constraints of civilized behavior. And there's absolutely no feedback from anyone about anything. We have very predictable results here. First of all, my peers were largely, first of all, ignorant of the subject matter, English literature, the language, teaching and how to educate, and how to intelligently mark. Next, there were a lot of very abusive, rude, and inconsiderate people on the sites. The ones that were really scary were the malicious ones. These were the ones who deliberately provided misleading comments and recommendations. Then there were the overawed. Remember, I didn't do the readings or watch the videos for the science fiction MOOC. I used a lot of impressive sounding words and phrases, and I found it was very easy to pass the peer assessments. Very seriously, there was no feedback on marking performance or how to improve it. As a result, again, utterly predictable results. Comments were very brief. Sorry about that. They were less than 30 words. They were very superficial. They were often very poorly written, ranging from barely comprehensible to utterly baffling. And my conclusion was they were largely useless as learning or as feedback tools. I refer to this as grading insanity. And in the fantasy and science fiction MOOC, if I were to sum up in one word, peer interpretation of marking, it would be negativity. However, you usually got a 2 out of 3 on the form and content. The reason for that is very simple. The instructor ordered everyone to hand out a majority of 2s, and quite naturally, people defaulted to that. And they just nitpicked the person to death to justify their choice of a 2, rather than thinking considerately about what the person had done and how to build them up, rather than pull their work down. There was an obsession with fault finding, with uninformed criticism, and with basically just what is wrong, negativity. On the fantasy and science fiction MOOC, I didn't do any of the readings, and I only listened to Unit 1 videos. I got a 4 out of 6 mark on that. The reason is I was marked by amateurs who just didn't have a clue about what to look for. It was very easy to pull the wool over their eyes. You Google a few things, you use a few buzzwords, and you're going to sail through. And that's largely because markers cannot distinguish real comment from nicely faked comment. On the forums, people blatantly stated, why do the work? Just take shortcuts. And many of them actually posted suggestions on how to shortcut the work and not do it. Now on the finance MOOC, we get another type of grading insanity. That one was marked by a computer. You do not submit calculations, only the answer. Fill in the box, A through D on a multiple choice. Easy to fake. No part marks for complex calculations, and some of the calculations were very complex. No personal or immediate feedback on why you got the wrong answer, how to improve your methods if you got the correct answer, and no insistence in building those critical synthesis and integration skills that are necessary to learning. All in all, a very unsatisfactory result. Now what happens if you don't agree with your assessments? Well, if you don't agree with the assessments, the result is don't bother us. Tough luck. It would be very expensive if we had to respond to tens of thousands of people, and so we don't even want questions raised. So the lesson is, learn to live with your frustration and irritation. There is no recourse if you don't like what's being done. Here are my conclusions. The Coursera's computers could not provide professional useful feedback, and peer assessment on Coursera was a useless way of assessing and or improving performance. My next major concern for these MOOCs was that cheating was fostered, ignored, or not caught. I provided absolutely no ID to enroll. I created a second account at Coursera under the name JoyBlorg. That is forbidden because of cheating. And so I intentionally violated the rules. I then made it exceptionally easy to catch me because I used the same computer to create the second account, and that should have been caught employing absolutely the simplest of programming techniques. I found it extremely disturbing it was not caught, or if it was caught, it was not followed up on. On the forums and peer assessments, people advocated cheating and suggested how to cheat, and the forums had numerous complaints about cheating. Furthermore, professors on both MOOCs reported cheating. My science fiction MOOC made the news, and I'd have to say dozens of plagiarism incidents severely underestimates the magnitude of cheating that was going on. If you don't validate the identity of the person submitting the work or the legitimacy of the work submitted, I submit that cheating will be far more of a problem on these MOOCs than it would be in a regular course, whether live or online. Next concern. Learners were as disposable as used Kleenex on these MOOCs. At BCIT, we're extremely old-fashioned. If a learner performance went off the edge of the cliff, we would notice it, and we would follow up. We would provide personalized assistance. There would be counseling, instructor peer tutoring, closer supervision, remedial or supplemental work. What, if anything, would be the response on a MOOC to a learner in trouble? Well, on the finance MOOC, I got 90% on the first unit, chose random answers, dropped to 10%, no follow-up. Even more disturbing and even more interesting, every learner gets to do each assignment twice to bring up their mark. I did not take advantage of this, and again, it was not noticed. Coursera's computers should have caught that and should have sent me an email out prompting me to try again. For the fantasy and science fiction MOOC, my mark dropped from 4 out of 6 to failure on 2 of the assignments, and again, absolutely no follow-up. The dropout and failure rate, my research showed for most of these MOOCs, or all the ones I could get information for, exceeds 90% of enrollees. I would have to say it's a failure as an educational product. If I were an academic and I produced this kind of results at BCIT, A, I would be ashamed of myself, and B, I would be subject to disciplinary action. I would note that if you have 100,000 learners and 90,000 drop out, who cares? But when you have only 100 people, you lose even 10, you notice, and you take action. So that brings me full circle to my original contention about these for-profit MOOCs. They are to education as fast food is to nutrition. Something's got to give, and what gives is the personal service and quality. Now, there is an appendix with a complete list of problems and concerns if you'd like to learn more. And you are welcome to download my report, which, as Una said, will be on FTP. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Carol, for giving us that insight from a learner point of view, but through an instructor's lens. And I am just looking for Carol's report here, and I'm going to be sending that your way. So for those of you who would like to read the more comprehensive version of that report, it's coming your way. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Preetha. And let's see, we are going to go back to the whiteboard, Preetha, and let me go ahead and, Preetha, I'd like to introduce you first. Did you just take over the whiteboard, Preetha?
Hi, Una. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Okay. Did you just take over the whiteboard, Preetha?
Take over the whiteboard, okay. Take over the whiteboard. Take over the whiteboard. Okay, I'm trying to take over the whiteboard.
Just let me introduce you, okay? So Dr. Preetha Ram is the Associate Dean of Science at Emory University. She's currently on leave as she leads the Open Study Educational Startup, which she co-founded and is now pioneering the use of virtual peer mentoring communities for online learning. Most recently, Preetha has been involved with the Mechanical MOOC, which is bringing together open courseware, online peer mentoring, and web practice tools to teach a gentle introduction to Python. And she is going to share her research from Open Study. So Preetha, are you ready to go?
Carol has control over the cursor, so I need one
for her to do.
Okay, let me see if I can get back. All right.
Stop sharing.
Yes, thank you.
There we go.
Okay. All righty. And so you should get Preetha. Okay, excellent.
Great. So thank you, Una, and thank you, everybody, for your time today. I'm going to talk a little bit about new models of MOOCs, and specifically for community colleges. And I'm delighted to talk about both Carol and Kelvin's work, because a lot of the issues that I will be talking about relate to and pertain to some of the issues that they raised, very rightly so. A little bit about Open Study. Open Study is a for-profit, a spin-off of Georgia Tech and Emory University, and has been supported by the National Science Foundation, the National Institute of Health, and most recently by an NGLC grant from the Gates and the Hewlett Foundation. So the problem that we are focused at is that there are just not enough venues to keep students who are in high schools from dropping out. There's 1 million of them dropping out each year, and community college students that are trying to graduate, and only 10 to 15% of them at the very best end up graduating. And finally, if and when they do graduate, what happens next? 53% of college graduates will be unemployed or underemployed. And what is a solution, and what can we at Open Study do about it? We turned to a solution which said that what is needed to keep these learners is to keep them empowered and on track through new academic experiences. So we decided to rethink that notion of academic experiences, keeping in mind what you all know, that there are many, many factors that affect dropping out and graduation, and they're all very complex and tied in together. But what is clear from the research is that more than 75% of dropout decisions are non-academic. That is, they're financial, they could be social. And so when you think about creating a solution which addresses this, which seeks to empower learners to stay on the path to graduation, we came across this recommendation from the White House Toolkit that creating and offering some form of college experience for high schoolers or college-going kids is critical. So what is this? At this point, this is when MOOCs came into the horizon, and also this is a story that we encountered at Open Study, which is a social learning site. We had the good fortune to meet a young man, a ninth grader in New York, who told us that after many years of just failing in math, he was empowered to continue and do rather well by another individual, a peer who he met on Open Study, but who took the time, and this is important, to create a relationship of mentoring and tutoring that helped him stay on track and then graduate from that particular course or that particular class. And this was a message for us. So we figured that any intervention that we build, any community that we build, would have to be focused on the human interaction, whether it was peer-to-peer or otherwise, because that was what was utterly necessary to empower these learners who have been disenfranchised by educational systems today. The community today.
Lisa, sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we lost your application sharing. Could you go back up and reselect application sharing?
Okay. Try it again.
Yeah, try it again. I'm sorry. Yeah, there it goes.
Where did you?
The system logged you out somehow. Sorry about that. You're looking great now. Continue.
Okay, good. So this is my Open Study story about the individual who pointed us the right direction, and which was trying to build a platform that would enable these kinds of human-centered interactions. So what we have right now is more than 200,000 users, 40 institutions, and learners coming from over 160 countries. What happens then is that more than 2,000 questions are asked a day, and more than 70% of them are answered within 5 minutes. Thanks to the Gates and the Hewlett Foundation, the research that we did was able to prove that 80% of these learners report better understanding. They also self-report better grades and also increased motivation to study, increased better study habits. Once again, this was work that we did with the NGLC grant. Our approach is based on all the research that you are familiar with on blended learning, and our Kelvin referred to the gentleman, the peer-to-peer learning, communities of practice, and social constructivism. And with all this in our toolbox, we created Open Study. Let me just quickly drop into how this relates to the MOOC conversation. What we do is we partner with universities and individuals that have free and open content. So step one is to provide the free and open content so that learners can learn from this content, but then also provide the learners with the Open Study community so that they can learn with someone, they can learn from someone. While this is happening, the second important component is to provide some measure of tracking and progress so that they can see how well they're doing, and they can see the path ahead. They can see the progress that they're making and how other people are progressing. This is tied into our assessment engine. We track progress in different ways. And then we're able to turn this around to the provider, the MOOC provider, the open content provider, and provide a certification of the learning that has happened and the other skills that are displayed on the system. So those are the 3 steps, and let's just take them one at a time now. Let's talk, for example, about the content. So our partnership with the OpenCourseWare Consortium provides us with access to the open and free content. Many of these are just wonderful college-level courses, but I chose to instead talk about introductory algebra given the audience today, and I know that many high school students who are thinking of going into community colleges and many community college students are in fact dealing with introductory algebra. So here, for example, on the left, you can see a feed or a link to the Open Study study group for this site. When you go into the Open Study study group, this is what it looks like. And we maintain that support for the online learner has to come with social affordances. When you walk into an Open Study study group, it immediately feels like you're in some kind of a Starbucks. There are people there, you know who they're talking to, you know what they're talking about, and at the end of the day, you get complaints like the one at the bottom. People complaining that they come to ask, end up to help, and then they get addicted to math. So I ask you, when was the last time someone complained to you that they were addicted to math? We have ways through the brain mechanics of keeping people involved, behaving well through our code of conduct, so that when they're interacting in a multiple user situation, they're interacting well. We have now managed to aggregate learners so that when they're working, for example, with this MIT OpenCourseWare course, people are willing to give help, and that's very detailed help. Here's a very detailed answer to someone's problem on a programming question. And the last part of this 1, 2, 3 step is providing the right assessment. Now, you have to remember that many of these learners have already failed their quizzes and their traditional tests, and we believe that giving them yet another traditional test or a quiz isn't really going to help them get to the next step. So our assessment is a blend of an assessment of how they're doing in terms of their problem-solving skills, and also, and as importantly, how they work with others, how helpful they are, how engaged they are, and so we report on 3 metrics. We call this a SMART score, and we report on their engagement with the content, their teamwork with the others in the group, and their problem solving within the context of the course that they're doing. Most recently, the OpenCourseWare Consortium is one of our early adopters, and we are now launching with several of the courses with providers like University of California, Irvine, Notre Dame, TU Delft. In addition, in fact today there's been a PR release about our partnership with 20 Million Minds on collaborative statistics, which is a textbook developed here in De Anza College. And it's a free and open textbook, and it's been used in 70 community colleges across the country, several of whom I'm here in the audience. So what we do to them is we monitor and we assess the learner on 2 dimensions. Actually, there are 30 indicators that we draw upon, and together all this comes together to give you the SMART score, which provides the assessment. Looks kind of like this. I encourage you to go online and look at your own SMART score. This, for example, is one of our better users at a very high level of 86. Each and every one of these blue, you are able to then dig down and see what are the questions answered. User feedback has been very good, and they get some really compelling stories of how Open Study was able to help learners on their individual learning pathways. Just want to finish this up by putting out there what the benefits we believe are of Open Study. For students, it provides a very flexible way of interacting with content, but supported by their peers on their learning journey, by people who are helpful, who can give them a context to what they're learning, and who can also help them stay engaged. Hey, I think someone's mic or phone needs to be turned off. There's a lot of noise on this line. Much better. Okay, great. So for students, we provide a state-of-the-art, a social learning network which keeps them engaged, wanting to come back more and retain. In doing so, they're also able to develop these documents, e-portfolios that will help them in their next job, because we believe everybody wants to get somewhere by learning. And most importantly, we give them an opportunity to re-engage with learning. For course providers, we have a learning community for academic help. We are able to provide an assessment for them that's scalable and that can help them turn on revenues. And at the end of the day, we are developing these new models in the hope that the learners that are often ignored will be able to come back and take their place in colleges and help complete the college completion agenda. Can talk a lot more about this. I welcome comments and questions and be happy to talk to you as well on an individual basis. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you very much, Preetha. And Preetha, if you could just give me that, if you could stop file share, stop application sharing, please.
Okay, where did I?
There we go. I'm going to go back to the whiteboard here. All right.
Okay, you were.
All right. So, oops. Get down here to our next webinar, as I mentioned, is December 4th. We will have Florida Virtual Campus, Bridge to Success, and the Kaleidoscope Project talking about their OER research, and we hope you can make that. I want to thank you now for attending. We're going to go into the official Q&A part, and I'm sorry that we are running a little late, but we've had such interesting presentations. I think it was worth it, and I know that my presenters can stay for a little while over the hour. So go ahead and get those questions in there. I'm going to start with a couple of questions that were directed at Kelvin and Carol, and then we'll follow up with Preetha. Let's see, we had a question for you, Kelvin, about how does designing a MOOC for professional development different from one aimed at students and or working professionals? I wonder if you could answer that.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I have not designed a MOOC aimed at traditional students per se, although I would classify faculty and faculty developers and instructional designers as working professionals. So you know, I think I would fall back on sort of the traditional andragogy, pedagogy kind of thing. I think, you know, if you want to appeal to kind of the self-directed learner thing and people being able to cut through the chaff quickly and get to the stuff that's relevant to them, I think those are hallmarks of adult learning design. Fewer, you know, jumping through hoops for the sake of jumping through hoops, and curriculum for the sake of curriculum, and so forth. That may necessarily be there in academic curricula, but we can probably do some other things when we're doing open online courses. So, but I have not developed an open online course and facilitated it aimed at traditional students. So I wish I could be more help to you.
All right. Well, thanks, Kelvin, for taking that one on. A question for Carol. What positive attributes did you find that might inform online course design while taking these MOOCs? You pointed out many of their deficiencies, but were there any positive attributes that you found that might inform design of courses in general?
Yes, the dedication and the hard work of the instructors who donated their time and their services to Coursera. Again, I don't know if people are aware of the fact, but all of the materials that have been uploaded to the Coursera site were donated by the institutions and by the instructors. We're talking literally thousands of hours of resources, and they are extremely high quality, very, very good audio visual, well done, done by, as I said, extremely dedicated teachers who have bent over backwards to produce something worthwhile. Unfortunately, it has been embedded in a very, very weak business model from my perspective.
Thank you, Carol. I'm looking for questions for Preetha. I did see a comment from Laureen. She said that she agreed with Preetha. I think the opportunity to engage and to get students of any age background thinking and prepared is critical to successful learning. I think we probably all as educators can agree with that comment, and that is something that's often lacking from the for-profit MOOCs. I'm waiting here for more questions. If I have missed yours, please feel free to either click on the talk button or to type it in again. And I'm sorry, there's been so much wonderful chat going on. I have missed a few of these questions. Okay, we have. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was just going to reply to Jane's question about, does Open Study work only with MOOCs and open education? No, we work with traditional institutions. Our 40 institutions are, and many of them are community colleges actually. We work with them as a learning resource that they can offer to their students for free. So, we work with, so that's just the learning resource. So I hope that answers. But James, you had another question about graduation. I couldn't see. No, Jackie says there's a question about graduation was for PRETA, so
yes.
I missed that.
I missed it too. Jackie, if you're online, go ahead and speak up. Well, oh, she just posted it again. Many community college students transfer before receiving a degree and or already have a degree. Are these included in the did not graduate percentage that you showed?
Yeah. These are numbers that I pulled from the website for the community colleges network, and I think so these include all that. So these are people who just don't graduate at the end of 4 years from
I think
from
that
college.
Jackie's point is that community colleges, because of their open access mission, have students who are not necessarily planning to graduate. So sometimes you have to look at those statistics with that in mind. These might be students that could be lifelong learning, it could be professional development. It may not be their main objective. So good question. Let's see. There was a question that was posted a couple times for you, Kelvin. Will there be a 2013 blend kit?
Yeah, I get that a lot. And I always give the same answer. We have not committed to a schedule of offerings for open online courses around the blend kit course materials at this point. I wouldn't rule it out. I'd love to see us be able to do it again, but as you can imagine, it takes a little bit of wherewithal on the part of my bosses to carve out some time for me and this year for Linda Futch to take a few weeks and really put a lot of our attention on this. So I just don't know yet about that. And I saw Margie's question too, if you don't mind me addressing that, Una, that she said if you fully completed Blend Kit 2011, can you get a retroactive badge? And we don't have any way of going back and badging those out. For last year, we didn't have those tasks differentiated that way, but we should have given everybody who participated last year a participation certificate. And if you didn't get one, let me know and I can get you one.
All right, excellent. One last question for Carol. Carol, did you provide feedback to Coursera or any of the facilitators of the courses that you took?
Unfortunately, you're told by the facilitators and Coursera to basically screw off. They're not interested in hearing from you. It is virtually impossible to reach anyone. The professors, Ratkin and Cow, both said they would not accept emails from students about the courses. So no, I have not been able to provide any feedback to Coursera. If Coursera is interested in contacting me, they're welcome to do so.
All right. Well, thank you, Carol, for that. That's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate.
I think at this point we're going to turn off the recording. I know my captioners need to leave. But we can continue to answer questions in the chat window, and I can see that people already are. So thanks once again to my amazing presenters this morning, and thank you all for coming to this event to learn more about MOOCs and where they're moving to in the future.
Thank you, and nice meeting you, Calvin and Prisa. Take care.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody. Thanks you guys for coming very much.
Thanks. Bye.